Hello and welcome back to the Neil Foster Rider Mindset Podcast. As always, thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. Whether you are listening while mucking out, driving to the yard, walking the dogs, cleaning tack, sat outside the stable with a coffee in your hand, or maybe hiding from your responsibilities in the feed room, pretending you are sorting rugs out. I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. And honestly, before we get started today, I just wanted to say thank you for all the messages that continue to come in about the podcast. It still blows my mind that riders all over the world are listening to these conversations. And what means the most to me is hearing riders say things like, I finally feel understood. I thought I was the only one who struggled mentally. This has changed how I look at my riding. I don't feel broken anymore. I'm finally starting to enjoy riding again, because that is why this podcast exists. Not to tell riders they need to become mentally perfect, but to help riders understand themselves better, to feel calmer, more stable, more confident, and less alone in the emotional side of this sport. So if this podcast helps you in any way, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Join the Neil Foster Rider Mindset Podcast Facebook group. Download the free Rider Confidence Tracker. Join the mailing list for weekly mindset support. And message me if you'd like information about one-to-one coaching. And don't forget, my upcoming 12-week coaching program for competitive riders is on the way. So, if you'd like early access details and updates, make sure you join the mailing list right then. Today's episode is one I think many riders desperately need to hear, because we are talking about one of the biggest hidden reasons riders stay stuck for years. And honestly, it usually has absolutely nothing to do with talent. Today's episode is called The Hidden Reason You're Not Progressing, even though you're trying hard. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, I already know something about you. You care. You care about your horse. You care about your riding. You care about improving. You care about doing well. You care about getting better mentally. You care about confidence. You care about consistency. You are trying, and yet, despite all the effort, you still sometimes feel stuck, like you're going round in circles, like you improve briefly, then slide backwards again, like confidence keeps disappearing, like one bad round emotionally undoes 10 good ones. And eventually, many riders quietly start wondering, what's wrong with me? Well, today I want to explain why many riders are not actually failing. They are simply trying to improve without the systems required to support consistent progress. And there's a huge difference between those two things. I want to talk about the rider who cares too much to switch off. I want you to picture this rider. Maybe this rider is you. This rider thinks about riding constantly. They replay conversations with trainers. They analyse competitions afterwards. They watch videos of themselves repeatedly. They compare themselves to other riders online. They overthink mistakes. They desperately want to improve. Their brain never switches off. And because they care so much emotionally, every ride starts carrying weight. One ride creates hope. The next creates self-doubt. One lesson feels brilliant. The next feels terrible. One competition restores confidence. The next destroys it again. And eventually, the rider becomes emotionally exhausted. Not because they aren't trying hard enough, but because they are trying hard inside emotional chaos. This is such an important distinction, because many riders assume, if I just care more, try harder, push more, eventually I'll feel confident. But effort without structure often just creates burnout. Why many riders feel like they are constantly starting over. This is one of the biggest frustrations riders experience. Feeling like they are constantly back at square one. One difficult ride and suddenly I've lost all my confidence. One tense warm-up and suddenly I can't ride anymore. One refusal and suddenly everything is going backwards. But here's something I want you to know. Most riders are not actually going backwards as much as they think they are. What's happening is emotional instability. And emotional instability distorts perspective. This is massive because riders often interpret temporary emotional discomfort as permanent failure. And once they do that, panic begins. The problem with emotional thinking. Now, emotions matter enormously in riding. I never want riders to think I'm saying, just ignore these feelings. This isn't healthy either. But many riders unknowingly allow emotions to become the sole measurement of progress. And emotions fluctuate constantly. You can wake up anxious. You can feel mentally tired. You can have outside stress affecting you. You can ride beautifully while feeling nervous. You can ride poorly while feeling confident. Emotions are information. But they are not always truth. And riders who constantly emotionally react to every ride become unstable mentally because they never develop objective perspective. Why riders become overly self-aware. One thing I personally see constantly in riders struggling with confidence is excessive self-awareness. Now, self-awareness sounds positive, and healthy self-awareness is positive. But hyper self-awareness during performance becomes destructive because eventually riders stop riding naturally. Instead, they monitor themselves constantly. They're thinking, what am I doing wrong? Am I sitting right? What if I mess this up? People are watching. I can't make mistakes. Why does this feel weird? What if I lose control? And eventually, the rider becomes trapped inside their own head. This destroys flow, instinct, rhythm, softness, feel, trust. Because riding is not just technical, it's emotional and instinctive too. And riders cannot access instinct while mentally interrogating themselves every second. Why riders lose trust in themselves. This is another huge hidden issue. Many riders slowly lose trust in themselves over time. Not because they suddenly become incapable riders, but because inconsistency erodes belief. When confidence constantly rises and falls, riders stop feeling emotionally safe in their own riding. They begin expecting things to go wrong, and this expectation changes how they ride. They become defensive, tense, overprotective, cautious, not because they are weak, but because their nervous system no longer trusts stability. Why some riders become addicted to fixing themselves. This is something I see a lot now because of social media and online coaching culture. Many riders become addicted to self-improvement. Every week, new methods, new exercises, new techniques, new mindset tips, new confidence strategies. They constantly search for the thing that will finally fix them. But eventually, this creates overwhelm. Because riders consume more and more information while trusting themselves less and less. And this creates mental paralysis. Too much information, not enough integration. Too much analysis, not enough calm repetition. Why feedback loops change everything. This is where feedback loops become incredibly important, because feedback loops create clarity, and clarity reduces emotional chaos. A healthy feedback loop says, what happened? Why did it happen? What pattern am I noticing? What can I improve? What actually matters here? Without this structure, riders simply emotionally react. And emotional reaction is not the same thing as productive learning. That distinction changes everything. The difference between reflection and self-punishment. This part is huge because many riders think they are reflecting when actually they are emotionally punishing themselves. Reflection sounds like, I lost focus after fence 4. Pressure increased and I became tense. I stopped breathing properly in the arena. I rode defensively after the first mistake. Self-punishment sounds like, I'm hopeless. I always ruin everything. I'm pathetic. I'm not good enough. One creates awareness, the other creates shame. And shame is one of the biggest destroyers of confidence in equestrian sport. Because ashamed riders stop riding freely. They begin riding cautiously and emotionally protecting themselves. Why defensive riding destroys performance. Many riders are no longer riding to perform well. They are riding to avoid emotional pain. That's important. They are trying not to embarrass themselves, fail, disappoint people, lose confidence, make mistakes, look stupid. And the moment riders become emotionally defensive, tension appears everywhere. In the body, in decision making, in reactions, in focus. Because mentally defensive riders cannot ride with freedom. Why riders need structure more than motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Some days you'll feel inspired. Some days you won't. Some days confidence feels easy. Some days it won't. That's normal. This is why riders who rely purely on motivation often feel emotionally inconsistent. Because motivation changes constantly. But systems create stability. Structure creates stability. Routines create, yes, you guessed it, stability. Reflection, again, you guessed it, creates stability. And stable riders cope better under pressure. The hidden damage caused by comparison. We have to talk about comparison because social media has intensified this massively. Riders constantly compare themselves to everybody else. You see another rider winning, progressing, looking confident, jumping bigger tracks, riding beautifully, and immediately your brain says, why can't I do that? But you are comparing your internal emotional experience to someone else's external presentation. That comparison is unfair from the start. You don't know their struggles, their fears, their confidence history, their resources, their support system, their emotional challenges. Comparison disconnects riders from their own process. And disconnected riders lose trust in themselves. Why small wins matter so much. One of the reasons riders feel stuck is because they ignore subtle progress. They only acknowledge dramatic success. But real progress often looks like recovering quicker after mistakes, staying calmer in warm-up, sparring less afterwards, trusting yourself slightly more, breathing properly under pressure, remaining focused longer, not catastrophizing bad rides. I can't tell you that those things matter enormously, because small emotional improvements compound over time. Why many riders are exhausted. A lot of riders are not physically exhausted. They're emotionally exhausted. Exhausted from analysing, doubting, comparing, overthinking, emotionally reacting, trying to hold everything together mentally. And because there's no emotional structure underneath everything, they leak mental energy constantly. That's why systems matter so much. Systems reduce emotional chaos. The riders who progress fastest. The riders who progress fastest are rarely the riders who never struggle. They are usually the best at recovering, the least emotionally reactive, the most reflective, the most structured, the most emotionally aware, the most consistent mentally. That's what creates long-term progress, not perfection. Practical things you can start doing immediately. As always, let's make this practical. Number 1, start tracking patterns. This is exactly why I created the free Rider Confidence Tracker. Because most riders rely purely on memory and emotion. Track nerves, focus, emotional triggers, recovery speed, preparation quality, confidence levels, reactions under pressure. Patterns reveal everything. Number 2, stop emotionally restarting from zero. One difficult ride does not erase your progress. One mistake does not undo months or years of work. You must stop treating temporary setbacks like permanent evidence. Number 3, create reflection routines. After every ride, ask, what went well? What challenged me? What triggered tension? What helped me stay calm? What will I improve next time? Simple, constructive, objective. Number 4, focus on recovery speed. Resilient riders are not riders who never wobble emotionally. They are riders who recover quicker. That's a huge difference. Number 5, separate identity from performance. You are not your last score. You are not your last mistake. You are not your last competition. You are a rider learning a difficult sport with a living animal. Perspective matters. The most important thing I want you to remember: you may not be failing because you lack talent. You may simply be trying to improve without the emotional systems needed to support progress. And that is fixable, truly, because once riders stop relying purely on emotion, everything starts changing. Honestly, this is why I'm creating the upcoming 12-week coaching program for competitive riders. Because so many riders are trying incredibly hard, but they have no structure underneath the effort. The program will walk riders through confidence, emotional control, performance routines, pressure management, consistency, self-belief, competition mindset, recovery after mistakes, overthinking, emotional resilience, and building sustainable confidence long-term, step by step. Not just motivation, actual systems riders can use repeatedly. So if you'd like early access information, make sure you join the mailing list now. If there's one thing I want you to remember from today's episode, it's this. Trying harder is not always the answer. Sometimes riders don't need more effort. They need more structure, more emotional awareness, better feedback loops, clearer systems, and healthier ways of reviewing themselves. Because confidence built purely on emotion is fragile. But confidence built on structure becomes stable. And stable riders perform better under pressure. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Neil Foster Rider Mindset Podcast. If this episode helped you, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Come and join the Neil Foster Rider Mindset Podcast Facebook group. Download the free Rider Confidence Tracker. Join the mailing list and message me about one-to-one coaching. And if you're interested in the upcoming 12-week coaching program for competitive riders, make sure you join the early access list, because I genuinely believe this is going to help a huge number of riders finally stop feeling mentally stuck. And finally, I'd love to know what's one area of your riding where better structure would help you feel calmer and more consistent. Come and let me know in the Facebook group, and I'll see you in the next episode.